Good morning. I'm Chaplain Mike Sibley. I'm a chaplain and licensed pastoral counselor at a psychiatric hospital in eastern Kentucky. I wanted to bring you a new video today, and today I want to talk a little bit about something that we all face power dynamics. Whether we're aware of them or not, we're all faced with them. And so I want to lead in today, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information from a guy named Eric Byrne and a guy named Thomas Harris. And the two of them, particularly Eric Byrne, came up with this notion called transactional analysis. And transactional analysis is this great way of mapping power dynamics in our lives and in our interactions with other people, and internally our interactions with ourselves. So, as we develop as human beings, we kind of lean usually to one direction or the other. Some people lean towards passivity, that is, they're very passive. The extreme of that is the human doormat. And then some people lean towards being more aggressive, and the extreme of aggression, obviously, we can think of examples of that from society. But if you look at that as a continuum, right in the middle is being assertive. And most successful people, when they're doing communication with other people, they're able to be assertive. And so that's what we're looking at today, these three different positions. Byrne calls those ego states. Byrne says that in any given day, we're operating out of one of those ego states in our communication patterns with others. So Byrne says that the three ego states are this adult, critical parent type ego state, and then there's an adult ego state, and then there's a child ego state. Okay? And when you're interacting with another person, you're in one of those three ego states, and that other person is either in the critical parent, adult, or the child ego state. So they're in one of their three ego states as well. And Byrne says that optimal communication is adult ego state to adult ego state. Going back to the continuum where assertiveness is, the best and most healthy form of communication is assertive communication to assertive communication, adult to adult communication. Thomas Harris breaks that down. He says it's the pattern of communication that says, I'm okay and you're okay. And Harris and Byrne both go to say, when you get into issues in communication, it's usually because of crossed transactions, is what he calls it, when the two people talking are not in the same ego state. For instance, I see it often in my work here in a psychiatric hospital. I'll see a staff member and a patient have an encounter, and the staff member is just trying to do their job, and they're very forceful with the patient, almost taking on, or not almost, they are taking on that critical parent role to be directive to the patient. Now, when they take on that critical parent role, particularly when you have somebody who has a history of abuse and that sort of thing, that person often gets pushed down into that child ego state. So the cross transaction is a critical parent down to a child ego state. And that child ego state is not a fun place. It's a place where you feel powerless, where you often feel fearful. You don't feel like you have much ability. And on that continuum, it's a very passive place. If you take it to the extreme, it's the human doormat place. But if you push somebody into that child ego state long enough, they'll start to push back. They'll swing up to that critical parent ego state. And if you get into that, then you're in a situation where you set up that dynamics for a huge confrontation, struggle with the power dynamic, because you have one person trying to assert their will from that critical parent place, and the other person trying to assert their will from that critical parent place because they don't want to feel that helplessness of that child ego state. And pretty soon you have two people hollering at each other, and neither one of them are hearing each other. Or the opposite is true. If you have both people that are in the child ego state, they're so passive they kind of just want to get away from each other. But the healthiest communication is the adult ego state. And what's interesting about the adult ego state is that if you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody and a person either goes to the critical parent or the child ego state, then if you maintain that assertive position and if you maintain that adult ego state, eventually you'll pull that person that you're interacting with to the adult ego state. It's something that happens naturally because if you maintain that adult ego state, you're being assertive. You're not trying to take anyone's power away. You're not giving your power away. You're simply interacting one adult to another adult, saying, I'm okay, you're okay. Versus those cross transactions where one person's a critical parent talking to a child ego state is that says, I'm okay, you're not okay. Some people even engage as a child the ego state to a critical parent ego state that says, "I'm not okay, you're okay." So these are cross transactions, and that they cause power struggles and power dynamics in our relationships with other people. And if we can recognize our transactions, do we jump to that critical parent place? Do we jump to that aggressive place on the continuum? Or do we acquiesce our sense of power? You know, do we give up our power? Do we become the human doormat? Do we become super passive and stay in that child ego state? Neither end of that continuum is healthy. The critical parent is always in danger of trying to take another person's power. The child ego state is always giving its power up. It's only in that adult ego state that we can recognize that we have a sense of power, but the other person that we're talking to has a sense of power as well. It's an equal dynamic, it's an equal intervention, or equal interaction. And it's only through that we can have healthy communication. So Byrne and Harris both agree that cross transactions cause power struggles, they cause power dynamics, they cause arguments, they cause hurt feelings. But if you can maintain your power and allow another person to maintain theirs, they're okay, you're okay, you're both in the adult ego state, then great communication can happen, and very healthy communication can happen. So hopefully you can apply some of this information to your life. And as you go about your day, I want you to think about your patterns of interactions. Do you lean towards passivity or do you lean towards aggression? And I want you to make a focused effort to try to maintain that adult ego state, to try to recognize that you have a sense of personal power inside of you, but everybody that you deal with has that same sense of personal power, and we're all entitled to our personal power. We don't have to give it to anybody, and we don't have to take anybody else's. We're all entitled to our personal power. I'm okay, you're okay, adult to adult, assertive people interacting constructively. That's how communication's done. That's how we avoid power struggles and issues and flaws and cross communications. I hope this information is helpful to you, and I hope you have a great day. I look forward to being with you in other videos in the future.